Hi, I'm Kai, and welcome back to FreeBuild for Planet Zoo. It's been a while. It was hellishly painful, and painfully hellish in equal measures, but it's finally in a place where I can let you play with it. I'll be honest, I don't remember when each feature was added, so I'll just cover all of them all over again. I should rewatch that video, shouldn't I? Okay, got it. Alright, let's start by covering all the stuff you already know and love. First up, paths. First of all, length goes up to 15 now, and down to 1. And width goes up to 15 as well, or also down to 1. So you can make really big, really small paths. Next up, you can now intersect paths. So if you place a path down, and you want to build off it, normally it wouldn't let you. But with FreeBuild enabled, you can build right through another path, which means you can now make plazas much more easily. Just like so. And as someone pointed out in a video, if you drop the width down to 1, you can use queues to make little planters. Next up, barriers. Same kind of stuff applies. So we can build them all the way up to 40 meters in length. With FreeBuild enabled, you have to have it checked. Like so. See, now it will let me build. If I increase it again. There we go. See, now it will let me build, but without it enabled, it'll just say, no, can't do that. And you can also lower the height of walls all the way down to 0.01 meters, something like that. Absolutely tiny. Just take that on again. Which makes for some very nice curves for paths. I can select that, move it over here-ish. So like that, move that over here-ish. Yeah, it sort of, kind of, almost works. And as you can see, with FreeBuild enabled, you can also cross barriers over paths and over other barriers. Next, terrain. Intensity goes up to 200. Size up to 60, so you can make some real big mountains real nice and easy. Now, I wouldn't keep intensity this high up normally, because it messes with smoothing and all that kind of stuff, so it gets all weird. If you drop it out to 120-ish, I think, that'll still work. And, of course, paths normally block terrain editing, but if you hold down Y on the keyboard, you can now build terrain anywhere. And finally for terrain, let's look at water. Water cleanliness now goes up to 150%. So, let's make 3 little puddles. There you go. 50%, quite dirty. 100%, that's sort of the normal clean max, I think. 150, way cleaner. Looks quite nice too, especially with rough water, it's quite a cool texture. I said texture, I meant effect, don't crucify me. And with that, let's move on to building, so construction and facilities, all that good stuff. So there's a bunch of things you can't build in specific areas. For example, benches have to be built on paths, cannot be built off paths. These kind of facilities have to be built off paths, cannot be built on paths. But with FreeBuild enabled, you can place anything wherever you want. And also with FreeBuild enabled, you can now press X to advance move anything you want. Or you can click on something and press X to advance move it wherever you want. You can basically treat any scenery piece as an advance move piece. Now keep in mind that different objects are handled by different bits of code. So, this bench for example, if I want to advance move it, I can't right now. If I select FreeBuild, I still cannot advance move it. I need to exit out, and then select it with FreeBuild enabled for that bit of code to handle this bench. So just keep that in mind. If something isn't working, it might just be that this object's bit of code doesn't normally handle that function. So select FreeBuild, or whatever you're selecting, exit out, and then re-enter that object selection. Staying on the topic of construction, grids can be disabled, so you can click here, or press, I think it's comma, to disable it or enable it. And then you can move this building freely and advance rotate it as you please. And then, of course, you can re-enable grids, and it'll snap back into position. at whichever height it was, which is a little bit low right now, but I think you can raise it with shift, yeah. There we go. And this of course works for any and all objects, so walls can also be disabled from grids, and then you can move them wherever you want. You can also advanced duplicate them, so that's I think Control X, or you can click up here, advanced duplicate. And just like before, if you re-enable grids, this will just work as a normal move tool. And this as a normal duplication tool. And as a little reminder, keep in mind what grids do. If I have a grid object selected and I place it down, it starts a new building. And as you'd imagine, if I disable grids, it will not do that. Now, if you have a building already selected, and then you disable grids, those will be added, those objects rather, will be added to that building. See, they're in a building, these are not. And I think the last thing I should have last time, just build a little tower so it's a bit easier to see. Oh, that'll do. Is that if I select something, like this, I can move it all the way out of the map if I have FreeBuild enabled. And with that, I think we're finally ready for all the new features. First up, you will have noticed that the buttons here now work. These buttons do function as actual proper interactors now, so you can click on them, you don't have to use shortcuts anymore. And with that, I think it's time to cover the most complicated new feature. It's a bit complicated, as I just said, so bear with me. Say for example you want to build a fountain, or a corridor, or anything that turns gradually with buildable pieces. Well, until now you'd have to place an item, rotate it a little bit, place another one, rotate it, and then build the whole thing very, very slowly over time with that. Well, you don't have to do that anymore. Allow me to introduce you to incremental rotation. This is a system to gradually, automatically rotate items without you having to do anything. First off, you want to make sure you have random rotation all ticked, because all of this relies on that working. With that done, all you have to do is select the axis around which you'd like to rotate, so let's say y-axis, and the degrees, let's set it to say 45. And now, FreeBuild will handle the rest. And of course, you can go in reverse, so let's select the equivalent button down here, and you can now rotate in the other direction. And of course, you can have any and all axes selected at the same time. But, very importantly, when you're done, make sure to untick Random Rotation All, because again, with FreeBuild, random rotation can be applied to any and all objects. Benches, facilities, walls, anything. So make sure to disable that when you're done. And of course, toggling any of these, or increasing the angles, decreasing the angles, all of that has shortcuts assigned to it. As does the rotation itself. Say, I don't want to start here, I want to start at the next angle. Well, I can press Control, close square bracket, and it'll rotate it once. See, I can take that and then rotate it forward with close bracket, or backward with open bracket. And of course, if you want to have a look at any of these shortcuts, they are all available over here under FreeBuild. And there's quite a few, including one we have not covered yet, so let's get into it. So, let's say we have a building with a utility item and we want to precisely move it. Well, in vanilla, you can't really do that because you select it, and it immediately switches into this view. You can cancel out of it, but it's just a little bit annoying, isn't it? Well, with FreeBuild, you can scroll down and toggle Heatmaps off. This won't change the current status of things, but next time you go into a building, Heatmaps will not open. Now, you will have seen this little bug. It's quite rare, but every now and again when you select a building, you get no pop-ups here. That's fine, just click over here, and everything will appear. I think it's just selected the wrong tab. Now, while this does not work immediately when you have a whole building selected, if instead you select just a single object and start moving it, this toggle will work immediately. And one last little construction change here. Steam Workshop blueprints now work with FreeBuild. So if I select one that usually crashed, I think this one used to not work. Well, it didn't crash, it just didn't build because it was red. If you now enable FreeBuild, you can place this building down. But one thing to bear in mind is that the interaction between terrain and blueprints is a little bit weird. So as you can see here, the terrain was not placed because it was invalid, and FreeBuild could not force it to be placed. In this instance, you can just undo that, redo it, and the terrain will be built. And now for the final change, and I'll demonstrate this with the paths menu. So you can select width from 1 meter up to 15 meters, and length from 1 also up to 15, and then also a range of angles. Well, if you open up the FreeBuild folder, you'll find a handy little config file that I ported over from my Jurassic World Evolution mods. And anything FreeBuild changes, as well as a couple of extra things, can be edited here. So up top we have path data. Let's play around with that. Let's change the path width to 5, and maximum width to say 25. And let's set the maximum length to 55. We save that. Let's just save here. And now if we just exit the game real quick. Yep. Animals age slower. Open up paths, and as you can see, length goes from 1 to 55, width goes from 5 to 25. And it's snapping on something miles away because the length is insane. And I think, unless I forgot something, that about does it. If I did forget something, I'll pin it in a comment. I hope you found that useful, I hope you enjoyed it, I hope you enjoyed the mod. And I will see you around.